So the first question that we're going to answer comes from Rob Beck, and this is what it states. He's like, maybe some of the characteristics a board may have based on where it's built. I know I hear you guys talk about stuff made in the U.S. versus stuff made in Austria versus stuff made in China. Characteristics like flex and break-in time, how much resin, etc., etc. So basically, he wants to know the difference between all the different factories out there, and there are a lot of differences. The more product you ride, obviously, the more you can start to see where a factory or like what area it's from, what factory, stuff like that. I mean, boards made at the mothership have a distinct feel to them. They have a distinct finish to them. Stuff made at Kyle is different, and those are Austrian made. And then when you get into like North America and you look at your Never Summers, your Mervins, your Marhars,
they're distinct construction and feel.
It's a very United States construction. And then when you get to Canada and you look at the Wireds and the Utopia and stuff like that, they're different versus stuff that's made at SWS in Dubai versus even going from SBF, Playmaker, Titan, GP87, Mausen over in China. You can see the difference. Or like Nidecker's Tunisia factory. You can spot the difference amongst all the different factories out there. And I mean, I know what my preferences are, and it's not American made.
No. I definitely haven't very thoroughly enjoyed some American made stuff, but I would almost say that if you were to take those exact same products and make them overseas, then
they'd probably be better.
Yeah.
They'd have a better finish quality.
Yeah, they'd have better finish quality, they'd be lighter, they would just present better.
Well, so the big thing I think with US made that people don't understand is if you ever look at them, you notice how they never have the gloss clear coat to them. The only ones that really do are Marhar, and they do a different style of it, but it's because they don't have a curtain lacquer to do that clear coat. So like anyone that's ever had a Burton or older Rome's, anything that had a glass clear coat and it cracked, that's just the lacquer on the outside. It's cosmetic. It's not the board breaking. It's just literally like when it gets those little spider web stress cracks. That's what it is. But it makes it more visually appealing on the wall.
Yeah, that's the main reason they do it. It's just because it cleans everything up. It hides any of the glass texture to it, so it just creates this super smooth top sheet.
Well, and you see that when you look at Mervin boards, you can see that texture in the fiberglass. Marhar does things differently, where they actually put a 3M clear sticker on the board and then put it back in the press for just like, I think it's like a minute or something, just to heat it back up and seal it. So it gives it that clear coat to it. So it's a little more shiny on there, but it's just a 3M sticker. And you can spot those differences from anything. A lot of it really is finish quality.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. If you're really just trying to visually pick out where it's coming from, where is the visual cues? Like there's just, it's hard to say without even having the stuff here to really pick it out, but there's just certain visual things that change. And American made, it just looks a little rougher, basically. It just looks older, honestly, is kind of the easiest.
It's an older style construction. They're using more epoxy. They don't have the machines to finish them. They're still running like a guy over, just free guiding a belt and stuff. Like you could see that with the old smoke and stuff. Like it would be a little rougher. And then or my personal favorite was anything that comes out of Prospect looks like it was finished with a wood chipper.
Yeah, it does.
The shittiest factory in North America.
They're just using a orbital hand sander, just that's how they finish the bases, I swear.
Yeah. So you can see it, and that's the other thing is like when you look at like the sidewall, the top sheet, and the edge. There's anything in Europe, Dubai, China. It's just a smoother finish quality around the edge. It doesn't have that look like it was finished with sandpaper.
Yeah.
That's just something you notice. It's because they have like the router to go around the sidewalls and really just do like that 10-45 degree angle stuff. And
then it gets finished too. That's the other big thing is American made stuff that cut sidewalls, but they don't finish the sidewalls.
Yeah.
Where they cut it. They cut it. It's hard plastic. It's sealed. Like there's no structural issues to it. It's literally just cosmetic. But then all the overseas stuff, the sidewall is actually finished, just like you would finish a base.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of it too. Is when you can see that really, really smooth, almost shiny, even for a lot of brands, sidewall to it. That's a big sign of being overseas.
Yeah,
right there.
And not to say there aren't places that do it in North America. There are a few factories that do it.
Yeah.
It's just not a common thing that you see. The bigger thing, though, is how much epoxy each factory uses. And every factory is different, but like anything in North America, it's like a goddamn gallon of it.
Yeah.
And the second you pick a new one up, it's still in the wrapper and you flex it, you hear that cracking. And that's the fiberglass breaking in and just flexing how it should. And it's the fiberglass just breaking up because it's been sitting there. It wasn't pre-flexed, you know.
Right.
I mean, like honestly, working in a shop, anytime a new company sends a board, like any shop employee should go through and hand flex every board, break that fiberglass so no one freaks out.
Yeah, we definitely have had that. Like I remember, like the second or third year of Jones, they were like the worst with that. Of the stuff that I'd ever, and this is way back, but like you'd go to hand flex it and literally it was the loudest, most aggressive cracking I've ever dealt with in a shop before.
Yeah. So when I was doing product testing for Never Summer, I mean, they'd send me like 7 to 9 boards at a time. And you just take them and you just grab that nose and put all your weight into it and flex it. And all you hear is, and that's just the fiberglass and everything flexing and the epoxy cracking and stuff. European boards, I feel like, are always the ones that do not crack the most right out of the wrapper.
Yeah, typically they don't. And Burton probably least because they flex everything before they send it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel like the European made stuff has the least amount of kind of resin set when it gets to the shop for sure.
China's probably the second, I'd say. You notice a little bit with like the Ride K2 stuff, but it's never anything crazy aggressive with it.
Yeah.
You can hear it there. The bigger thing is like how they break in. I mean, I feel like American made boards are dead to me after 30 good days of riding. Roughly, not saying 30 days and then it's dead. I'm just saying roughly after 30 days, it just doesn't retain its pop like the stuff from Austria and China. China especially has come such a long way in the last 5 years.
It used to just be like cheap crap and like your only under $400 stuff used to come out of China years and years ago. But like there's really quality stuff getting out of there now.
Well, and then you got so much generational labor over there because it's been over there for 20 years now. So you got father and son, sometimes grandfather, father, son,
right,
working over there, just depending on like ages and stuff. But it's so unique to me to be like, when I see people like, I only buy American made. My boards are great. I buy 3 a year. And I'm like, you only ride 50 days. Why are you buying 3 boards, sir?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it's one of those other things. The other thing that I don't think people understand is where the base material comes from. There's really two. There's Isosport and Durasurf.
That's pretty much it.
And I'm a huge fan of Iso. Durasurf just, it in my opinion, is an inferior P-Tex. It's any board that I've ever ridden that just ends up getting those weird tears in it and it rips and it peels different. It's been Durasurf. It's not Iso. Iso always tends to just be more durable, in my opinion. And it has it has a better finish quality after it's been done. Like you look at a Never Summer with its Durasurf, and depending which color they use, like,
that's the other big thing is when you're looking at stuff like that, like figure out if you're looking at buying, X brand and blah blah blah, and you're looking at the specs and it says Durasurf on it, and you go into the shop and you see a white or yellow base, don't buy it. Because usually at that point they're probably going to do some sort of flip flop and search out a darker color. Because the Durasurf stuff, that's what we used at Signal when they were still being made in the U.S. And the black, red, and green bases were always the most pain in the ass to work on because they were that much harder. The clear, the yellow, and the white, and blue even ground out so much easier.
Dark blue or light blue?
Like a medium, light blue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like basically, the darker the color, the harder it is.
Yeah. So that was one thing. Like when I was testing with Never Summer and I'd hit rocks and stuff, the black would always survive. Like I had a Heritage. I think it was a Heritage the first year that it was coming out, and I drilled a rock at Copper at like 50 miles an hour. It was waist deep snow, and I'd like done a drop in and just turned over this rock. It pushed the base through the top sheet, but the base never separated. But any of the blue bases or white bases, I would just disintegrate them. Like they were just always softer. And I remember bringing this up to them and saying, hey, I think like these colors are softer. And they're like, well, it's a little different, but it's not much. And I was like, it's noticeably different. It's weaker. Yeah. And that's the other thing is like, in this day and age, we shouldn't even have die cut bases anymore. No. It should all be sublimated. Mm-hmm. Graphic technology and manufacturing technology has come to a point where die cuts are just cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's a lesser quality because then you're also putting these seams on the base of the board. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing. Like when you run your hand over a base of a board, you can feel where any of those inlays are for the die cut and feel the difference. And like I was, not to shit on Niche, but it's like they said their stuff was pre-sample samples because they rushed it for SIA. So I got to ride some. These weren't even pre-production samples; they were like pre-production samples.
Yeah.
So
it was their samples to figure out their samples.
Yeah. So you could run your hand on the base and you could feel like where the die cut was sticking out harder and further than like the rest of the base. It wasn't flat. That's you shouldn't like a sublimated base. You're not going to have that. It's just going to be consistently flat. That's almost why I like Endeavors, like the new Endeavors, because they got like the tiniest little die cut in a non like riding area that's really going to affect everything, and the rest of it's just all black.
That was one of my favorite things when the Yup came out from Signal. Is they basically just forewrote any sort of branding on the base and just went with a literal one-piece solid black base.
Yes,
because that's what Billy wanted.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's faster.
Yeah, it's faster. Like, and that's the other thing is there's a reason why World Cup skis all have black bases.
Yeah,
it's faster.
It's faster.
It just is.
Die cuts, the seams pull. You can feel them. It creates flex points. Like if the core is pushing weird or anything when you're twisting a board, you can get the die cut to pop out. Like it always blows my mind that Never Summers have those giant ass eagles on the base, and I'm just like,
all those little teeny points and
like the points and like you go and you look at
just
it,
asking for stuff to blow off.
Ride was used to be so bad about that too. Yeah. They've gotten a little better, but still, anything that's just when they're like, or the Worldwide Weapon from K2. Remember that year that it was like 27 different colors because they were just using recycled colors, and I was like, oh my god, there was so much in that board that just made no sense to me why you would do that. Die cuts are just, God, they're such an inferior thing. But what would be your factory preference? Like, where would you want your stuff made?
Austria.
Yeah?
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, either Austria or...
Like Austria today or like Austria before Elan went out of business and they had all that generational labor?
Probably that. I mean, there's still some stuff like the part of the reason I say that, to be completely frank, is solely due to the Niche stuff that's coming out of the Kyle factory. I just like that factory a lot. Just that stuff felt so solid underfoot compared to what it was at the mothership, and then even what it was before that at GST and Elan and
GST,
everywhere it's ever been. And that's kind of, I guess that's kind of the easiest way for me to look at it is Niche has been made at so many different factories. And, they haven't changed up their designs drastically as far as what their boards are concerned. So it's a pretty easy way to get a comparison by riding a few different generations of their stuff. And the stuff coming out of the Kyle factory is fantastic. I think it's the best stuff that they've ever had. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Kyle factory. And to speak to the Kyle factory, that's where Burton went to have Family Tree made.
Right. Well, when I was talking to Anna when I was in Salt Lake and I was picking up the boards from her, and she basically said, she's like, it's really cool being at Kyle because they only deal with Burton. So it's like they've got this huge account. They know they're going to get paid. And we're like the cool little experimental brand, and they're trying new things with us. And we get so much attention there, and we can just dial it in. So I understand it. I think for me personally, I would probably go with China.
That's definitely a close second. And I would say if you want to go major manufacturer, because Kyle's a minor manufacturer, just because they don't make that much.
Right.
Major manufacturer, yeah, I'd go China for sure.
Well, I think
just the consistency of it.
Well, you look at like how big K2's factory is there and everything it does, and then like even some of the smaller ones are still solid. Like, I mean, I'd be a little apprehensive about anything coming out of Titan, but as long as you have good QC, it's solid. Like, you look at Playmaker, and that's Nitro's factory.
Yeah.
They're doing all sorts of cool stuff over there. Who the fuck's honking out there? Bastards. I'm trying to podcast here. And, but that's the thing is like, there are good there's like great factories in China too. I've been really enjoying the stuff from GP87 lately, especially like Telos, their brand.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you know, but you look at how many brands they're making now, and there's some like Weston, Cardiff. Let's see,
Is
United.
Gentan out of there?
Some
Some of it.
some of
I don't remember Derek
yes,
saying that.
yes. I think Gentum is, but Moss isn't.
Right.
So,
I don't know where Moss is made.
I think it's Yaki, which is formerly the guys from GP87.
Ah, okay.
So, but yeah, I would do that. But when it comes to like U.S. manufacturing, I still think there's some great stuff made here. It's just small batch or like North American, like Rob Dow's stuff that the custom stuff he's making at Wired. I've got on the Chase. Like quality wise, it's a beautifully built board and stuff like that. Utopia over there in Eastern Canada has made some good stuff.
That's really solid stuff. The National I think this year and last year, maybe not this year, definitely last year. The National from Rome.
Yeah,
Utopia, and up on the wall, like unless you had a really detailed eye or you unpackaged it because it came in different style packaging than the rest of the Rome stuff, you'd have never known.
Yeah,
like, it was a North American made product that definitely, from a QC standpoint, from a visual on the wall standpoint, rivaled European for sure.
right. I think Marhar does a great job as a small manufacturer.
Yeah, definitely.
And they just moved factories, so I'm really curious to see what this new stuff is that's in the mail. Like I'll have it tomorrow or the day after.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to see how that looks now that they've moved factories, because as Nate was saying, he's like, I was kind of ashamed of our factory. I just needed it to be bigger, and now it's bigger. And he's like, I'm really proud of it. And I was like, you shouldn't be ashamed of it. Like you're putting out some of
the best QC stuff.
Come on, look at Smokin'. They've been around for 20 years, and there was a couple years there. Some of their shit was kind of questionable when it came out. And that's the other thing. It's like Smokin's.
Yeah.
Like they've dialed their process in so well that the boards are looking so much better.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go and you look at Mervin, and it's like anytime I look at a Mervin that's got a darker base, they just look dry on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and I have a Zoid, and I've had it tuned multiple times. Like it just doesn't ever look like a new base, even after getting tuned. Like it just, like, granted, a used base is never going to look like a new base. I get that. Don't yell at me on the comments unless you feel like you need to. But it doesn't have that like just tuned look to it.
No,
it just doesn't. Like I don't know. Like it's just the material that they're using for the base is just, and I don't have any real functional issues with it necessarily. But like you go and tune it and then wax it, and you should be able to, right after a scrape and a buff, be able to pick it up and like get some glare.
Yeah,
I don't get that on that base.
No, it still looks like it's dry
a little bit.
Yeah, especially in the nose and tail. Mm-hmm. It's all like where it doesn't have the metal edge, where the tucked edge is. Mm-hmm. They always just look so much drier, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And Never Summers, depending which color base, they do that too. Especially I've seen ones that are like brand new out of the wrapper. Factory wax should last about a day or two, if that. It shouldn't look dry right after that. Like, I've had ones that I've made like 5 laps on. I'm like, why does this thing look so fucking dry? And it's just, I don't know if it's just they're using like a crappier belt when they finish it, or what.
I don't know, because Signal never had that issue. I don't
know.
Like their bases they polish up, they get that kind of gleam to it, and it's not like we were using crazy fancy shit. We were literally using belt grinders, and we went from 80 to 120 to 180. That was it. That's all we did. We didn't even throw it over a stone, and we used a machine waxer. That was so I don't know what these other manufacturers are using for base material or construction process or grinder or whatever doesn't produce that look or finish to it. But
it's just such a distinct thing. You can see. I don't know. I mean, you've seen some horrible North American made product like Oz.
Nightmare was really bad too when they first started. Now they're out of GP87.
No, now they're at.
Are they not there anymore?
No, they're going to Titan. So
their
quality went like here, and now it's like kind of down here, but it's like they started over here, so it's like they kind of gone up.
But yeah, the Oz stuff too. When Colorado Skiing Golf picked them up like 3 years ago, I don't think they sell them anymore, but just because I think it was a Colorado brand that they could pick up instead of Never Summer, basically, just because they don't do Never Summer. And I just went in once, and we had already had our issues with them like number of years ago. He tried to call out Arbor for doing die cut wood top sheets.
Something they've done since they started.
Literally since they started. Number one board ever made by Arbor had a wood top sheet. Like, back off, dude. And so I just went in because I was like, I don't want any of these to sell. I don't like this dude. I don't think he's good for the industry, and I think their boards are shit. So I went in and showed every one of their employees, like, here's what's wrong with all of these boards. Because I showed them all the burnt edges, the thin spots in the base where it didn't come out of the press right, and they just ground through it to make it look okay.
Yeah, did they have to take them
burnt?
They had to take them to the tune shop and grind them.
A few of them they had to.
Yeah, like stone
they still came out with epoxy, so they were like, "Fuck, we can't put these on the wall." So they had to actually go and tune
Is that
boards
company
out
still
of the
in
wrapper.
business?
I don't know.
I don't even care.
I hope not.
Yeah, like fucking hobby brands.
Yeah, and
fucking hobby.
Yeah,
brands.
that was definitely some of the worst. I mean, and then you have your Prospect snowboard stuff that was terrible. Yeah,
the fact that Prospect made Munson look good.
Oh yeah, right? I've seen a Gilson in person, and their bases look
they're so terrible because they can't grind the edges because it's elevated.
Right.
Like, oh my god, that's another brand that they keep trying to say they're a big time player, but realistically, they're probably making like 700 boards a year globally.
Yeah,
because I remember trying to be like, we made 15,000 boards this year, and I'm just like, Ever only made 17, and they have 5 presses and 3 shifts. You guys have 2 presses and 1 shift. That's physically impossible, sir.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You just don't have the capacity to do that.
Period.
And they're oh fuck, man. Their stuff. I've seen a lot of bad stuff from people doing garage brands.
Sure,
but that's a garage brand. It's a hobby for them.
Yeah, it's almost expected.
Yeah. Let's see what else. I mean, there's certain defining characteristics for certain boards. Like Mervin's all have tucked edges. You can spot that a mile away.
Right. And I feel like, and I was trying to think about that. Are there any non-U.S. made brands that do tucked edges? Major brands?
I really can't think
other than for prototyping. That's it.
Like
the only other brand I can think of at all that does tucked edges as a standard production is Snowfisk and their Wasatch.
Well, Snowplanks too.
Snowplanks does. Okay.
Yeah, Snowplanks does.
I didn't know.
Yeah. They do that, but I think that's just because of how they laminate their boards and everything. So those are tucked edges. But I mean, you're right. I don't think I ever seen any European or anything.
I don't think any other major manufacturer.
No, they all have a full wrap edges, which they should. Everything should have a full wrap edge. Tuck edge is stupid.
I get why they do it, but
at the same time, you could literally take a hacksaw and cut right where the tucked edge is on any Mervin, and it really would not affect the integrity of the board at all.
Right.
Because it's all full of tip fill.
And that's the thing is, they argue like, oh, it's easier to fix, and like,
it is until you hit that spot.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have an edge that I can blow in and cut the edge out and just clamp it.
And that's the thing is you could still run the same amount of tip fill, and then you get all basically the same benefits plus the extra added durability of having a little bit of edge up there.
Yeah.
So you may blow and dent your edge in, but again, you've got all that tip fill out there, so you just cut your edge, you tuck it in, and it's fixable just like the other stuff is. So I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of that. Ultimately, as long as you're not running your nose into shit, it's not really that big a deal. But if it was my preference, it would be tough. It would be full wrap, not
everything.
Yeah.
The other one that blows my mind is the factories that are still doing 2x4 instead of 2x2 insert packs. I'm like, what the fuck? How can? No, you're limiting stance options. Just do a 2x2.
Yeah,
inserts are cheap.
I mean, how many brands out there? You have Ride, Nitro, Bent Metal, Arbor, about a third of Union. Are all doing mini disc.
Yeah.
And Ride, out of that list, is the only one that you can actually get to fit on a 4x4. Like, the disc is just big enough that the very corners of that, you have to cut the washers to make it fit 4x4 because the washers are coupled. But all the other ones, like Union, will not fit on a 4x4. Bent Metal won't fit on a 4x4.
No.
The Union stuff won't fit on a 4x4. The spread of the holes just isn't big enough to actually fit across that spread. So, you've got a 4x4 board that suddenly limits you to a certain number of bindings that you literally cannot ride.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I've had people that ride mini discs complain about Dinosaurs Will Die boards or anything that's got the slam back inserts.
Yeah.
So it's got that 4-pack.
Yeah, they can't use
and they're like, I can't.
Yeah. Which I was actually literally thinking about that the other day because there was something in the shop, I don't remember what it was, that had the slam backs. And I was just like, with all the bindings out there that are mini disc nowadays, like for a slam back insert, you just need to have your insert, do like a 7-pack or a 6-pack and set it back and have your reference be in front of that. And that's going to have to be slam backs going forward because there's too much mini disc out there.
Yeah.
They don't have to really work anymore. Like, and I get the kind of visual cue of this is your slam back insert and it's almost separated out from the rest of the insert pack. So like it's a visual cue of like, this is a specific purpose for why this is back here. But at the same time, you got like, there's the Moss Pintail 170 that's got a nose riding insert pack, a centered insert pack, and a back foot insert pack.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
I want one of those for Can. I want one of those for Can Kevin Carvet, but I want you all the way forward and all the way back. I want you doing a split on the board.
We already did that with like Kilroy. We already did the 30-inch stance. All right.
But I think we could do like 40 this time, maybe 50.
I don't think my legs will go that far apart.
That's okay.
I'm gonna need some like 7.0 canning to make that happen.
I will make them. I will custom make you canted footbeds that will fit this.
I may have to decline.
You've changed. You used to be cool.
No.
Damn it.
Was I?
That's okay. I still want to do like an ICS just pushed all the way in with a mini disc.
See, but that's even not going to be that narrow. That's one of the things I brought up to the Burton dudes a lot. This is way off topic. Is that channel's too wide. I mounted somebody up the other day, and they wanted a stance of like, I asked her for like 21, and the channel was almost minimized with an ESD binding. You literally can't go narrower. Obviously, with mini disc, you can go a little narrower than that. But the narrowest I bet you can get, even with a mini disc, is probably 19.
That's lame, because we're going to have to T-bolt a board.
Might have to.
Just put your stance like this. Just see.
Let's not do that.
Come up with some bad ideas.
All right, should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, why don't we move on to the next question? I think Well, no, wait. Before we move on to that, let's talk about top sheet material.
Oh,
because one of the things that always blows my mind is like anything European built or mass produced for rental has that rental top sheet.
You mean the same one that Never Summer uses?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's a fucking rental top sheet.
You can give it the fanciest name you want. It's thick.
It's a thick, textured rental top sheet. It's literally designed for boards that are just going to get destroyed and thrown away. It stiffens the board up. It deadens the feel. It's not carbonium. Calling it carbonium? Oh, it's got carbon in it. It's carbonium. Ugh. It's a fucking thicker textured plastic. Like, you can spot those top sheets a mile away. Like, no other company does it. It doesn't make it visually look better. Stickers don't stick to it.
The only other company that does textured top sheets is Mervyn, but what they do is they take their regular top sheet. They didn't change their top sheet material, and they just press a pattern into it. They used to do it way back in the day when I was talking to
Capita did it with the Scott Stevens.
Yeah, and they used to do it way back in the day. And what they did back in the 80s was they would put shower curtains on top of the top sheet underneath the press, and when it would press, it would lay that pattern into it.
Okay.
So basically, I don't think they're using shower curtains. Maybe they are. Who knows? It's Mervyn. But that's basically what they're doing now to get those textures. Is they're just throwing something in between the press and the board that gives that texture. So they're not actually adding material. It's the same top sheets that they used to use.
Yeah, it's just it's adding a pattern
stuff like pressed into it more or less.
Yeah.
Whereas the Never Summer top sheet texture is integral to the material, and you get a big roll of it, and it already has a texture on it, and it's just thick.
It's thick,
and that's why it's more durable because it's just thick.
But it also it deadens the ride. It changes the flex, and it adds more weight.
Yeah, which really doesn't help a brand that your construction goes base, dampening foil, glass, dampening foil, glass, dampening foil, core, dampening foil, glass, dampening foil, glass, dampening foil, thick ass top sheet.
I mean, I get it if you don't want to feel anything in your board.
Like if you want the smoothest possible, dampest,
not smoothest.
If you want the absolute dampest ride possible, and you really don't care whether or not your board has a personality or life to it, then sure, that construction's fine. But like, that's insane. That's a ludicrous amount of material to put into a board.
On top of the amount of epoxy that has to go in with that.
Right. And that's the other thing is the glass has to be fully wetted through with epoxy in order to hold everything in place. And like that's just so you have twice the amount of epoxy because you have twice the amount of glass, and the only reason they're putting that much damping foil in is so that they don't delam, and it's unnecessary. Like they maybe are using better materials than they used to. I know 5-6 years ago they were still using glass from the fucking 90s, but it doesn't help when you're putting that much in it. And if you are using that much better material, you don't need to keep using that much damping foil. All that does is make things ride dead.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like
Right.
you're adding more material to compensate for the way you're doing it when you could be using less material and that would lower the cost on everything too.
Right, because you're using less glass per
less
board.
glass.
Yeah.
Like
Using half the amount of glass. You don't need 4 layers. You need 2.
Yeah.
One below and one above. That's it.
Like,
anyway, there's some carbon laminates and other shit, basalt,
unless,
whatever. That's fine. But
unless you're like trying to make like a more carvy type thing, then 3 layers of glass.
Yeah,
I would say that, but you still need to torsional flex and stuff. It whatever. I don't know. I could go on forever on that.
Yeah.
Let's just go to another topic.
Yeah.